pushes way up the racetrack, and now here comes Janzik. Janzik goes by Query, and he goes by Inman. Burnell gets a great run, another 3 wide for the race lead. It's going to drag race off of turn 4. Shepard is there, but it's Larry White at the line. Still going to be Pat Ward, and they make contact. Britton has broken the race car. AJ Slideways. Alan Johnson wins.
Whether you hug the infield tires or rip the cushion, you found the fastest dirt track podcast in motorsports. Welcome to Where Legends Are Made, the official podcast of Land of Legends Raceway. Here's Stephen and Brad Ovens.
Hey fans, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Where Legends Are Made, the official podcast of Land of Legends Raceway. Your track announcer, Stephen Ovens, here with another of our drivers from the pit area. Hope that some fans can learn a little bit more about the drivers they're seeing going around the racetrack every lap and kind of help fans make that connection to our drivers and all the efforts that they put into these racing machines every week. And this week, we're going to talk to another one of our sportsman drivers. His name is Brad Sawyer. He is the 2023 recipient of the Spirit of Racing Award at Land of Legends Raceway. And Brad, appreciate the time to come on the show this week and chat racing with us.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I really appreciate you guys inviting me on. Been listening to a bunch of these that you've done so far, and each of them, actually all of them have been great so far. So it's a cool thing you guys are doing, and it's nice to be able to kind of hear from the different drivers and get some details about their lives,
Well, I want to give a little plug to the fans because, we're more than happy to take requests to talk with drivers here on the podcast. We're trying to put as much content out there before our season gets started and kind of help tell some more stories of drivers. And we try to do that each and every week at the track, but there's only so much time to get into everybody's, personal story and their racing story. So it's cool to do this in the off season. And speaking of the fans, this was a message we received at the track from a fan that said, "Hey, I want to hear more about this Brad Sawyer guy. We've all seen the video clip from last year, and we want to hear more about this guy's story." So that's the genesis of this episode here, Brad. And it's I feel like at this point, that was one of the finishes of the year last year that people were talking about, even though it kind of, what would we say? It kind of almost happened by mistake with the hose coming off your helmet during the race. Yeah,
it definitely wasn't. I certainly didn't expect to be one of the highlights of the year when I started this year. Figured I would just be out there and kind of gaining experience and making laps, but it just kind of happened the way it did, and it's kind of it's funny the way it happened. But and if I had won or lost that race, it still would have been cool to be part of one of the one of the more exciting finishes of the year. And like I've told you before, I subscribe to Land Legends TV, and this whole off season, especially while I'm out in the garage working on the car, I've been just kind of rewatching the races back. And, because when you're back in the pits and you're a driver, you kind of miss a lot of the on track action. And looking at Land of Legends TV this year, there was a lot of good racing. And, that was just one of the good finishes throughout the year. So even in the heat races, it's so, but yeah, it was cool to be part of that.
Now let's rewind a little bit. We'll talk about that race and that finish more later. But starting out, I know during your Victory Lane interview you talked about I've been a fan for a long time. Walk us through that. What was for you and your family, how did racing get started? Were you just coming out because you heard about it? Did you have somebody that you were following? We hear so often, I was there watching this member or that member of my family. What's the racing story start like for you?
Sure. Yeah. I've never had anyone in my family that actually raced, but my family's been around racing for a couple generations now. For me, it started with going to the racetrack with my dad back in the day when I was growing up. Used to go to Spencer Speedway a lot, Canandaigua. My dad used to take me out to Ransomville every once in a while. So, I got the bug that way. But my family's been into racing for a long time. My grandfather used to take my dad and his sisters to the Daytona 500 every year. My dad actually has a really cool picture that he took himself in 1970 of Pete Hamilton's car being pushed into victory lane, and Richard Petty's sitting on the hood. And so my dad was there for that. That's cool to see that, they were actually able to go down there every year and be part of that. My aunts, my dad's sisters, they were into the dirt racing thing for years. My aunt Lynn, she scored at a couple tracks, and I think Canandaigua was one of them. So just my family's just been into cars and racing and all that stuff for years, and I'm kind of the first one, I guess, to really step into it this far. So it's been an exciting experience so far, and but it's been a long time coming. I can't remember the first time I went to Canandaigua, but it must have been when I was probably 5 or 6 years old. And, just through the years, me and my father going every year a couple times. And then as I got older and got my driver's permit, I started going on my own and taking friends with me and all that stuff. So just been around the track for a long time, seen a lot of drivers. For me, guys like Bob McCready and Joe Plazek and those guys, the Hurricane, Steve Payne, those are all guys that I grew up watching race there. And, I got to meet Steve Payne this year in the pits, and I was like, wow, this is Steve Payne. That's amazing. So kind of fanboying it a little bit, but it's just cool. So that's my story, I guess.
Well, you brought up Joe Plazek, and I got thinking when you said that, and when you started going to the races, I'm thinking, wow, it had to have been almost like a full circle thing for you as a kid going to the races. We had Joe back to Canandaigua this year for the first time in a very, very long time. I know when Joe left racing at Canandaigua, it was maybe not on the best terms, and he came back this year for his Wall of Fame induction. So, and I'm right there with you, like growing up as a kid and, being in line to go get Joe's autograph and get his trailer tour. And it like felt so full circle having him back for the Wall of Fame this year.
Absolutely. And it was, I remember, I think I was there racing that night, and it was just kind of weird to think that, Joe Plazek's being geez, I can't talk today, inducted into the Hall of Fame, and I'm out on the track. It was a weird thing.
Yeah. Now you go from, just being interested in racing for a long time, but it's a big step to go from, I'm a fan, I love this stuff, I want to do it now. Like how did that process work out for you? You talked at the banquet about how it, was kind of a dream of yours, but how did that all become a reality?
Yeah, I've always kind of had in the back of my mind, like, I want to do this someday. And part of me was like, I'll never be able to do it. It's too far out there. I don't have enough experience. I don't have any family members that do this. But there was always a part of me that said, I really want to do this. And I knew getting into it, or I knew that the biggest wall to climb wasn't necessarily going to be financial. I mean, obviously, yes, this takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of backing, and it's expensive. I mean, there's no way around it. But I kind of knew going in that the time was going to be the biggest thing, right? Like, you just can't buy time, and working on these cars and maintaining them and taking it to the track, it all is time. So I kind of knew that was always going to be my biggest enemy getting into this. But I just got to a point in my life where I had a house now, I got a garage. Jamie and I have our son Everett, and I was like, okay, I kind of got all the blocks in place, right? So just finally, actually, so this is kind of a funny story. A guy I work with, all my friends, they all know this. They all know I've always wanted to race. They've always kind of, prodded at me like, hey, when are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? And I was always like, I don't know, maybe someday, blah, blah, blah. But this guy Will that I work with saw the car for sale on Facebook Marketplace, and he messaged me. He sent it to me through Facebook Messenger, and basically kind of said, "You do it, you won't." And so I got to look. I'm serious. This is how it happened. So he kind of dared me to do it, and I looked at the listing, and I'm thinking, oh man, I got the money to do this, but once again, like I knew that the time's going to be the biggest thing, and looked at it, called up Ken, the guy that was selling the car, and I said, listen, dude, I'm interested in this thing. I don't know if it's really going to be my thing, but I want to come at least look at the car. We can talk about it, kind of get an idea from you is like, what's the time involved? How are you doing with it? So I did that. So I went out, drove out to Ken's place and looked at the car. They were actually getting it ready to race that night. It was a Saturday. He was going to head to Canandaigua later that night, and talked to him for a little while, and I went back to home, thought about it for a while, and obviously talked to Jamie about it because that's very important. And like I said at the banquet, I didn't get the response I thought I was going to get from Jamie. She kind of looked at me and she goes, "Well, haven't you always wanted to do this?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, then do it." And I was like, "Wow, well, that was way easier than I thought it was going to be." So, yeah, I just kind of bucked up and did it. And the way I looked at it was that if I buy this car, I get into it, figure out that it's not for me or that it's too much or whatever. I can always just get rid of it and go back to being a fan, which there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, honestly, being a fan is great. You go to the track, you pay your money, you drink a couple beers, and you go home and you don't worry about anything. So, but here we are. We're still doing it. We're going to do it a second year, and so that's kind of how I got into it. It was really just a dare from a friend.
I got to tell you, man, there's a lot of drivers that I've interviewed in my day working on the media side. I think this might be the first story that started. I saw a car on Facebook Marketplace. I love it. I love it.
It is crazy. You can buy a race ready sportsman car on Facebook Marketplace. They're always out there.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. You know, I love everything about the story, man. Like, it's having a want and a desire to do something, and like you said, taking the plunge and doing it. I'm curious, as somebody who was new to owning and driving a race car, and I got to imagine some of, obviously there may have been some nerves going out onto the track for the first time, but way before that, I have to imagine just pulling in the pit gate is kind of again, one of those maybe nerve-wracking moments because one, you don't know what you're getting into. Two, I don't know how many people in the pit area that you knew necessarily. What was that experience all like?
To say I was anxious is an understatement. I mean, I probably could have thrown up the whole day, the whole morning last year before practice, because we took the car out to the practice session before the season started. And yeah, it was just, because we really didn't know anyone in the pits. I was kind of going into this all by myself. I mean, obviously I bought the car from Ken, and Ken was there that day. And Ken's buddies with Eldon Payne. So I did have those guys that I kind of knew of or had talked to once or twice. But other than that, really didn't know anyone in the pits. And yeah, didn't know what to expect. I mean, we didn't even know how to get our pit passes. We kind of pulled up to the gate there, and I was like, well, I don't know what we do now, but I guess we walk up to that little shack over there and, and buy our pit passes. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it was extremely nerve wracking. Just totally new, and there's a lot on the line. I mean, obviously, you take a race car that costs a couple tens of thousands of dollars, and you go out there and you just do it. And yeah, I really didn't know what to expect. Obviously being a race fan my whole life, I've seen it from the outside, but actually being in the car and owning it and having all that on the line, it was definitely extremely nerve wracking. But I will say that once I actually got in the car and took a couple laps out there, I felt way better. I was like, okay, this isn't as crazy or as bad as I thought it was going to be. So that was nice. Having the practice day was definitely nice. I will say that I was probably even more nervous the first race night than the first practice night. That was quite a nerve-wracking experience.
Yeah, I'm sure, because now you're out there with a lot of other cars in a competitive setting versus we're all just here shaking down, getting laps and making sure that nothing comes apart and everything is working as it should. That first race experience, it was a whole nother deal.
Yeah, exactly. And then that night I got a little overzealous. Well, I wouldn't say I got overzealous, but I got a little overexcited and went to go past Kennedy Painter on the outside going into turn one. And, I wasn't comfortable with being around other cars yet. So I think I was so focused on her car that I forgot where the wall was. And I actually, I hit the wall past the flagger stand down into turn one, and I flattened both right side tires. And I was just like, oh, come on, man. Like the one thing I told myself was don't hurt the car on night one, right? Like that was my number one goal, was to take it home in one piece. And like the second lap out there, I put it in the wall and flattened both tires, and ruined the bead locks and wrecked a rim. So I remember pulling into the pits and just being like, this is my worst nightmare. I didn't junk the car or anything, which would have been awful, but definitely was kind of a little nerves on the first night, and it bit me a little bit. So kind of a tumultuous start to the season, but we got through it.
As time went on, you could just see you were getting more comfortable with things, and again, by season's end, you were out there running really competitive laps, and now you're right there battling, for a win. I mean, you're out there running the cushion. I mean, you looked like somebody that had some experience doing this stuff. What was the whole experience like? Trying to build up that confidence and build up that skill set as the season went on.
There was a lot to it. I mean, you say I was running the cushion. I found throughout the season that I was much more comfortable on the cushion, only because I did not want to be by those tractor tires, the Uke tires down low. I'd seen so many cars hit them, and I knew if I touched one that it was going to be the end of the day. So I actually kind of started running the cushion on fear, which is kind of a funny way to put it, because I know there are people that don't like being up on the cushion, but I didn't want to be anywhere near those tires. So that was why you saw me on the cushion most of the season. But yeah, it was just every week, like Jamie kind of put it, it seemed like every week there was something that didn't go quite right. Early on in the season, it was my vision. I wear glasses when I drive typically, and it just wasn't working with the helmet, and the glasses were really limiting my peripheral vision in the helmet, which I didn't love, because with all these Hans devices that we have out in the cars, you really can't see out the side of your helmet, or you can't turn your head to see very well. So having that peripheral vision to see where the cars are next to you kind of helps a lot. And so, it took me about halfway through the season to finally get contact lenses, which that helped a lot. And then also my glasses were fogging up under the helmet, which also wasn't fun. And then I was having problems with the actual visor fogging. So I ended up getting a new helmet blower, and that fixed that. So every race we kind of got through over a hurdle, even though they're stupid hurdles. Like, who would have thought that your first year racing, that being able to see out of your helmet would have been your biggest problem, So
right.
Like, that's why it was frustrating for me. It was like, I want to go out there and race, but I have these things that are stopping me, like not being able to see. That was really frustrating. But so every race we got a little bit better. And, I remember making my first green flag pass was a huge deal, because just the confidence of being on the track and like kind of trying to figure out what other cars are going to do. And, another one of my biggest fears going into the season was wrecking someone else's car, or causing someone to crash, or, causing damage to someone else's car. That I just didn't want to do that, and I don't think anyone wants to do that. It's obviously no one wants to junk someone else's car, but, so just passing cars under green was a huge undertaking for me to get the courage up to do. And, obviously by the end of the season, I was definitely more comfortable and was able to actually pass people. But it's as stupid as it sounds. The first 2 or 3 races out there, I was afraid to pass cars, especially after, like I said, that first night when I went to pass Kennedy and kind of lost my concentration and hit the wall. So, but it's a slow learning process. I mean, I'm still, even though, watching that race back that I won last year, I definitely looked confident in the car, but inside the car under the helmet, I was still nervous as heck, and definitely I wouldn't say comfortable quite yet. So definitely some learning to do still this year. I want to get a lot of laps under my belt. Once again, keep the car clean. Hopefully I can finally stick to that this year, and just get out there and just log laps and get comfortable.
What was the best piece of racing advice you got last year?
I'd have to think about that one. I know one good one that actually Doug Elkins told me. He stopped over during practice. I think he was just kind of doing a walk through the pits, and he saw us and didn't recognize us. So he came over and started talking to us, and he told me that the turn 4 wall comes up quickly, and that's very true. And that was a good thing to learn. He told me that before I even went out on the track the first time, and it was good to know, because that turn 4 wall does come up quickly, and it's definitely something you need to watch out for. And that's another thing that bit me this season was, I think, the second or third race that we had, it was early in the season, a pretty dusty night, and I had a couple cars in front of me, and instead of letting off like I probably should have, I kept my foot in it and ended up slamming into the wall coming out of turn 4, and that damaged a bunch of other stuff. So once again, didn't bring the car home in one piece like I wanted to, but Doug told me that, and I should have listened, but I think that was it. I didn't get a lot of advice as far as like what to do on the track, but definitely the turn 4 wall coming up quickly was probably the most important piece of advice I got all year.
The other thing that I'm curious about too is, if there's another racer or somebody that's, not yet a racer, maybe they haven't found their gem on Facebook Marketplace yet. What is something that you would say to someone who's either brand new or thinking about doing this that you think may have helped you at the very beginning?
I guess, obviously I've been around cars my whole life. Me and my dad have worked on cars. I had a 87 Monte Carlo SS that I worked on for a long time. Having that, you have to have that base mechanical aptitude. You don't necessarily need to know how to work on a race car, but just working on things, that helps you a lot. Because if I didn't have that base level knowledge, trying to do this on my own in the garage here would be very tough without having to call someone constantly and say, hey, how do I do this? Or how do I do that? So there's that. One thing that I always wanted to do and I never did was get with a team and maybe go to the races for a year with them or whatever, and just kind of hang out in the pits and just see what it's all about. That's something that I always wanted to do. But Stephen, as you know, having a young kid around, my son Everett's 3.5 now, but the past couple of years, I didn't have the time to go to the track and do something like that. So, and that's something that I probably should have done years ago, was just get with a team. But honestly, up here where I live in Spencerport, there's not a lot of teams around here. There's the Sweetings out in Brockport, but there's not a lot of teams in my local area where there's a shop that I can go to and help them work on the car every night. It's but that's definitely something that if you wanted to get into this, I would recommend, is to get with a team. And if you can't go and work with them on the race car in the garage or the shop every night, at least go to the track on the weekends and just check out and see what's going on. Cause there's a lot to know,
No, absolutely. And I thought that was something that might be a challenge for you when I, got to know where you were from and everything was, yeah. So, Spencerport isn't necessarily thought of as a hotbed for racing.
Right. And it's kind of unfortunate because I live right around the corner from Troyer. Troyer's not even 5 minutes from me, but there's not a lot of teams that are based up in this area. And that is what kind of stinks, is that, if I need help with something, I can't just call someone and have them drive here. It's an hour drive from Canandaigua, and that's where most of the people with a lot of the knowledge are down from that area. So I think it is something that teams from up in my area or Rochester kind of struggle with, is that we're a little bit far away from most of you guys.
No, absolutely. But glad to have you a part of the show, and glad to hear that things are going, going pretty well. As far as where the car sits today, how far along are we? Are we just about ready to go? Where's everything at?
Well, I'm actually sitting in the garage right now looking at it. So it's getting there. Got a little bit behind the eight ball. Had some stuff to do around the house this winter, so I didn't really get out here in the garage working on it regularly until about January, which was probably a little bit too late. I stripped the car down basically almost to the bare chassis last fall, and then it kind of sat for a couple months, and now I'm really getting into it. But we're going to be ready. I'm pretty sure we'll be ready for the first race. I actually have a good buddy of mine that's getting married next weekend. So unfortunately we won't be able to make it to the open practice, which I wish we could, but honestly, I don't even know if I'd have the car done by then anyways. So, but it's pretty much almost ready to go. Just got the rear end in it 2 nights ago. Front end's been done for a while. Still have to get the body panels wrapped. But other than that, I'd say it's 95% of the way there. At this point, it's just the little things, and especially making sure you go through every nut and bolt and make sure everything's tight and that you're not going to have any major issues the first night, something stupid falling off the car or something like that. So, just, all that stuff takes time. So, but we'll be ready. Hopefully the weather holds out for the first night, and, I'm looking forward to getting on the track.
Awesome, man. Well, I look forward to seeing you guys back at the track. I think one of the more funny moments I had last year was seeing your little guy just living his best life on the ramp at the trailer last year.
Yeah.
He seems like he's really into it.
He is, and he loves race cars, and right now his biggest thing is monster trucks. So
oh, nice.
Unfortunately, Daddy doesn't have a monster truck, but the race cars second best, I guess. But yeah, hopefully he'll grow up around racing and grow up at the racetrack and learn to like it. But he definitely keeps us busy. So I know Jamie's. I felt kind of bad because Jamie's main job at the track last year was to kind of make sure he didn't get himself into trouble. So, and he can be a handful. He's a busy little boy, so
yeah. Well, it was pretty cool seeing you guys all down in Victory Lane the night that you got the win, and I know you got a lot of good people that are helping out, either crew or names on the side of the car. Tell us about some of those folks.
Yeah, so actually picked up a couple sponsors over the off season. A lot of them obviously are family friends or friends that I've had for a while. I'll go down through the list here. We have Levantines coming on the car. That's Syrian Cafe. My friends Beth and Muhammad own it. It's over on Elm Grove Avenue in Lisle, which is actually right down the road from Troyer. Great food there. So they're going to be on the car. TK Auto Works, Rigged Sport Fishing, AccuGrind. That's actually Jamie's brother's business. So he's going to be on the car this year. That's a stump grinding business. Dope Shirt, Western New York Welding Services, Sweet Murray's Hot Sauce. That was one of the sponsors I had had last year, but not on the car last year. So I know you read that off a couple times. And then JRO Design. He's the one that's doing the wrap for me. I know they wanted to give me that free wrap there at the award ceremony, but I'd already had the car worked on, or my Justin, who owns JROR, was already working on the wrap. So unfortunately I had to turn it down, but I really did appreciate that. That was a very nice gesture. And then ECM is going to be on the car. That's Everyone Can Move. I met a guy, his name's Brady Dean, over the off season. He is a huge fan of Land of Legends. he's one of those guys who is watching on Land of Legends TV every week. He has cerebral palsy, so it's a little hard for him to get to the track. But he basically, after my win last year, we got to messaging and got to know him pretty good over the off season. Great guy. Hoping to get him to the track this year a couple of times, but he's one of those fans, one of those thousands of fans that you guys reach every week on Land Legends TV, and it's one of those things that it's a religious thing for him. Every Saturday he's watching. So appreciate everyone's support on the car this year, and just hoping we can have a good, clean season.
Well, we're certainly going to be watching and big fans. It was a really, really incredible story. And before we get out of here, you mentioned Image X offering that last year at the banquet. I'm curious. I'm sure it was probably incredibly overwhelming while it was all happening, but just your thought on how all of that, what that experience was like, at the banquet. Like everybody just, loved the story, and there was a lot of words and actions of acts of kindness that came from that. I can't imagine like any of that was on your radar of what that first season was going to be like.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it right on the head. Absolutely not. Did not expect any of that. I certainly didn't expect to win a race this year. And I feel like winning the race kind of got me some good exposure to everyone, which is awesome. But yeah, the free wrap from Image X, that was, I was floored. In fact, I think he left by the time you announced that, so I wasn't able to say thank you to him in person. But yeah, I mean, to stand up in front of that group of people and be able to accept the award from the track, it was, I did not expect that at all. Guys like Danny Johnson were in the audience, so once again, like the fanboy in me was just like, holy cow, I can't believe I get to stand up in front of this group of people and accept an award and say some words. It was cool. And, really do appreciate that from the track. Obviously, like I said, not expected, but much appreciated. And, in the end, I'm just a regular guy who was just trying to live out some dreams, and it was nice to be recognized for it.
Absolutely, man. And like I said at the banquet too, I think this really spoke to your character and how you go about this whole thing, on the biggest night in racing in your life to that point, winning a race at a track you were a fan of for so long, and just everything that comes with that. And the last parting word is, I hope the fans enjoy the Big Block show. I hope it's a good one. Like, I'm not even kidding you, man. Like, that has stuck with me since the moment you said that. Was, wow, this guy just had the biggest moment in his racing career so far, and his parting word was, I hope the fans enjoy the show, man. So keep that up. We love having you as part of the pit area, and looking forward to seeing how this season goes for you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And, obviously we appreciate what you guys do. The whole Land of Legends TV thing's amazing. You're announcing. I know, I feel like announcing is an underrated thing, but it is not easy. I don't know how you do it every week, keeping it entertaining and just having all those stories. And it's amazing what you guys do up in the tower. Yeah, I'm looking forward to being part of the show this year. And in the end, that's what this is it's a show. Sure, we're racers, we're out there competing, but if we don't have the fans, it's not a thing. So, and you guys do a great job of making it a show and keeping it a show. And just, I hope we can all remember that moving forward.
Love it, man. Appreciate the time, and look forward to seeing you out at the track.
Yeah, we'll be there 2 weeks from now. Hopefully the weather holds out.
All right, folks. There's Brad Sawyer. He's going to be back with the number 80. Sticking with 87, right, Brad?
Yeah, we're sticking with 87 this year. Yep.
Now, actually, before we get out of here, I probably, I skipped right over that. Where did 87 come from?
So when I bought the race car, Jamie goes, "Well, what number are you going to run?" And I go, "I don't know. I don't really have any numbers in my life that are super, sentimental to me. I guess 'cause like I said, I'm the first one in my family to do this, so I don't really have a family number to run." So Jamie and I were both born in 1987, so I said, why don't we just be 87? And so that's how we got there.
Awesome. Oh, that's cool.
Yep.
That's cool. All right, man. Again, appreciate the time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on.
All right, folks, there's our interview with Brad Sawyer. Appreciate you tuning in, whether you're here on the Land of Legends Raceway Facebook page or subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. We appreciate this thing has really been growing here in the off season, and a lot of fans have been tuning in, trying to learn about our drivers and the stories of the drivers behind the wheel that put the show on for you. So appreciate the fan that requested this interview, and we're happy to bring it to you. Hope you've enjoyed them, and continue to listen to more that we've got coming up here on Where Legends Are Made, the official podcast of Land of Legends Raceway.
Land of Legends Raceway fans, tune in each and every week of the racing season to Where Legends Are Made, a podcast dedicated to covering the drama, excitement, and hear from the drivers from your favorite dirt track. Stephen Ovens and Brad Ovens walk you through the week that was Where Legends Are Made. Subscribe on Apple or Google Podcasts.